We'd like to welcome each and every individual to Voices of Integrity for Mental Health. And so you're about to embark on a journey. It's a crazy, crazy journey. And so I just want to give you kind of heads up on it. It's if you're a mental health professional, there's going to be a lot of things here that might challenge your mental health. Like it might go ahead and uh, you might disagree. You might say, that's not what I was trained. That's not true, whatever. Again, it's fine. It's your perspective, right? We're all entitled to a perspective. And so, which of these four shapes would you tend to, which of these four shapes would you tend to like the most? A cube, a pyramid, a wavy line, or a ball? A cube, a pyramid, a wavy line, or a ball? And so we've gone through the ball and the cube. So today we're going through the wavy line. And so the wavy line in mental health, the wavy line, or boring or not fun, that's these type of people. Okay. They will tend to have these type of mental health issues. Again, if you're a mental health professional, like, you have some level, of training, right? So you've gone through college, maybe classes, something. And so you have an awareness, you have knowledge. Okay. None of this is designed to go ahead and say people shouldn't have therapists. Shoot, I have my own therapist, Beth Smith. She's amazing. So, she's, somewhere out of, Europe, I think, overseas somewhere. And so the expressive, their tendency will be foolishness. So as we learned, where the amiable, the core of the amiable is fear. The core of the analytic is going to be despair. The core of the wavy line is foolishness, and the core of the driver is anger. Now, common things in the expressive personality is narcissism. So it's like the expressive is almost built to be narcissistic. They're the center of attention. Everything is about them. So there was a year. Well, let me go through each one of them and then we'll swing back. And you all can interrupt. Okay. So please do so if you have questions. So narcissism, ADD, ADHD, addictions, explosive drama, eating disorders, and obsessive compulsive. So these are tendencies that you have. Now, if you chose the expressive, the wavy line, or boring or not fun, and secondary, you went ahead and chose the amiable. In addition to these disorders, you might also have panic attacks, passive aggressive, stress, PTSD, anxiety, and social phobia. If you chose the wavy line and the cube, you might have pride, disassociation, major depression, bipolar, dysthymia. Dysthymia, if I'm even pronouncing it right, I guess is consistent depression. If you chose the wavy line and the pyramid, good news, in addition to all these potential things, you would have disorder defiant, poor conduct, disruptive, sexual disorders, oppositional, physical abuse. So Tom Kuhn, past president of Century 21, when I showed this to him the first time, he read through it. He's like, Mark, I've got all of these. That's a chameleon personality. We'll get into that in future podcasts. But this stuff here, is like, it's just like every one of these, there's pros and cons to it. So every one of these has strengths. Every one of these have weaknesses. And so when we understand that, so our greatest strength is our greatest weakness, and our greatest weakness is just our greatest strength misapplied, is taking a strength and carrying it too far. So the expressive, one of their greatest strengths is their energy, excitement, and enthusiasm. One of their weaknesses is their energy, excitement, and enthusiasm. So narcissism I went ahead and switched my personality. So I'm naturally a driver, analytic personality, analytic driver. So anything you all see in amiable or expressive, and the expressive is the weakest energy I have. So what I did is I switched my personality to an expressive, for a year. And Rosanna, did you want to share anything about that year experiment? How much you enjoyed it?
I still remember the peas ending up on my wall.
So Rosanna is my wife of 39 years, and we have 7 kids. And so when I became an expressive, what I did is it wasn't 24/7 for 365. It was as much as I could handle. And so what I did is I went ahead and switched my personality for multiple reasons. I'm not saying I recommend this at all. You talk about mental health issues, this will mess your mind up royally. And so what I did is so that year, so that's the favorite year of many of my kids. My kids, because I became the fun dad, like we'd have food fights. Like Melissa, our second oldest daughter, like we had like peas at dinner time, and we had a spitballing with peas that, and it's so cool when they're warm and mushy and they explode. And so, so like the kids, that
That
was
was a mess.
yeah, it was a mess, but the kids loved it. It was a lot of fun. Um, Ken, did you want to go ahead and comment on your experience with me and Billy Bob, the year of the expressive?
Um, when I mean Billy Bob was I first met him at on a Sunday morning at our church, where Billy Bob came forward and I think it was about birthdays or something. And oh my goodness, I was laughing so hard. I think I fell on the floor
He did.
in the church. I was an associate pastor at that time. It was so funny.
So the backstory on that is that the driver, that's me in analytic, they don't like to celebrate birthdays publicly. They don't like to do anything publicly. And so I had tried to get out of, they made you come up in front of the church and celebrate your birthday publicly. And I hated it. And I was, Ken and I, he's my brother. So our dad was the pastor of the church, our founding pastor. So I had a lot of, influence. I was one of the founding members. I had been to the church since the church beginning. I was the chairman of the deacon board. I tried like crazy to go ahead and get that policy eliminated, and I couldn't do it. So I said, okay, what would an expressive do? And I said they would do something crazy. And so what I did, and it's a Baptist church, a GRBC Baptist church. It's very conservative. You can have a piano on the stage, but definitely no drums and no guitar. Like you can't do anything. Like it's very, very, very conservative. And so I said, but if I was an expressive, I dressed up as Billy Bob, buck teeth, like a homeless person, and disheveled. And literally, when I walked in the church, people avoided me because they didn't recognize who I was. So I kind of came in a little late and I sat in the back pew of the church. Yes, I was nervous. Yes, I didn't want to do it. And so one of the rules that I have is do things you don't want to do. That year was real, anyways. So when they called for birthdays, which I know they would, I jumped out of the pew and started dancing up and down the aisle, and I went to the front, and the church was stunned. They didn't know who I was until I got up in front. Ken, he's an analytic, expressive. He was laughing so hard he did. He fell off the pew. He was laughing so hard. There were other people that were not as, they did not find it as humorous as he did. They thought it was maybe irreverent. They thought it was kind of rude. And then Billy Bob got up in front, and Billy Bob had his chance to speak. And Billy Bob said, you know, I just love birthdays, and I love that the church makes people come up and speak. And there were other people in the church that were drivers that didn't like the policy either. And I tried everything. I would skip my church Sunday, you know, and they'd call me up the next week. Sometimes I'd skip 2 weeks. It was very traumatic. You know, mental health, you talk about mental health, but that was back, I don't know, 25 years ago when they weren't concerned about mental health and trauma. Like if I knew then on the trauma and how traumatic this could be, then wow, that would have been different. So Billy Bob said, you know, we really don't make anybody do anything other than the birthdays. And so if we could, I want to continue this tradition going on, because every year I'm going to go ahead and show up on my birthday, and I'm going to do that. And what's weird is I tried the driver approach and it didn't change the policy. I tried the analytic approach and it didn't change the policy either. And I tried the amiable approach, the nice approach, and that didn't change. These three personalities could not. And I spent years doing this. Years. And it never changed. And Expressive got up and changed it in a heartbeat. And I learned the power of the Expressive. When our oldest son died 3 years ago, suicide, gunshot to the head. I am so thankful I had the expressive energy inside of me, because it helped me survive. So if you're a mental health professional, you can have an opinion, a perspective. It's your opinion, it's your perspective. You can think Mark doesn't have a doctorate in psychology or whatever. You can think whatever you want to think. Don't want to hurt your feelings. I don't care. So that year was so traumatic on me mentally. It absolutely, and again, I'm not recommending people change their personalities. I'm not saying that, because it was mentally, I never experienced it. It took me like 6 or 7 years to recover from that experience. Like mentally, it was so hard on me. Like I did that for an amiable, and that wasn't too bad. So I did a year of amiable, and then I went ahead, and we can talk about that in another session. And it took me 9 months to figure that out. And then I went 2 years with the amiable. And so that helped me tremendously there. But this was the expressive, because it's so contrary to who I am, that I took a 6-7 year break from that. And then I felt I had enough strength 6-7 years later to do 2 years in an expressive. So I spent 3 years in the expressive world, and it's crazy. So most of you have probably heard of, high functioning alcoholics. I might be the highest functioning mentally ill person you know. And so I've taken my mind in places that I wouldn't even recommend people taking their mind. When I was 22, I had a counselor. Now they'd call it a therapist. And that guy saved my life, probably. I started having suicidal thoughts when I was 8 years old. And so I've never taken medication, ever. I'm not saying you shouldn't take medication. So this is where got to be careful with a mental health professional, because they're pretty, pretty rough. So I've known a lot that have their master's and doctorate degree. I said to one that I was doing coaching with, I said to her, I said, every mental health professional that has a master's or doctorate or more, they're all messed up mentally. And she laughed, which I thought was kind of funny. Like she laughed and she said, that is so true. Like they try to go ahead and fix themselves and they think getting an education is going to help that. I'm not judging anything. I'm just saying that maybe mental health is very different than what we thought. I don't know. I don't know. So when we look at this, and we'll talk about so many things in this podcast, and I would encourage you to share it with other people. It takes and looks at mental health in a totally different way. I've never experienced anything like it in my life. So it's thinking about things in a very, very different way. Anyone have any questions or thoughts on today's podcast or input?
No, I thought it was really good. It's always good when you share stories because then it helps people to relate to to the personality a little more. Then they're like, oh, wow, I never thought of her doing it that way. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think the disorders come from a worldview. My dad was a pastor, so I was raised Baptist. What's interesting is a lot of devout Christians are the ones that dislike me the most. Whichever. They've definitely caused me, the church or the people or pastors have definitely created, a lot of a lot of trauma for me. When I say trauma, I don't think of trauma as being negative. I think it is positive. I mean, I can choose to have feelings or whatever. Like after my mom died, um, a few weeks after my mom died, my wife and I went out to a movie on a date night every Friday night. Highly recommend that. One of the best things in the world. If you're a husband, take your wife every single day, just every single week, have a date night. I'm just telling you, one of the greatest things. And if you're a wife, figure out how to get your husband to take you out like every week, every week, even if you have kids, figure out how to go ahead and do a date night. And it doesn't have to be spending money. It just, and it doesn't have to be a whole, it can be a half an hour. With 7 kids, younger kids, it was hard, but we figured out how to do it. And we were at a restaurant afterwards. And my wife went ahead and said to me, she said, "Are you sad because your mom died?" And I said, "I don't know." And she says, "What do you mean you don't know?" I said, "I don't know if I'm sad." And she said, and she started laughing and she said, like, how can you not know if you're sad? And I just I don't know. I just didn't know. I said, I don't know if it will serve me well being sad. And so, um, and then she started laughing more. She's like, "You are such a strange person." And then I said, "Well, I'm glad I'm not sad because you would be so rude if you were laughing at a sad person." And then she giggled and she laughed. Now, guys, there's some men, husbands, you know, it can pay off on a date night if you are sad. I didn't know that then, but I did learn. I'm like, wait a minute, I could use this for my benefit. Like, okay. Anyways, it's another story. Like, and so like I think that, there's a great book that says laughter is good medicine. That same book in another place says that sadness is better than laughter. What does that mean? because it says it purifies the heart. So I go ahead and years ago, as we get deeper into the mental health, we go down round and round. Mark's mind goes. Where it stops, nobody knows. So, see, I believe that feelings are very different than what we in society think of it as today. Like, I think feelings are there to serve us. So years and years ago, I don't even know how many years, probably 20 years ago, I saw how other people were abusing me, mistreating me, um, like shafting me. Like it was, and I'm like, how can I heal from that? How can I heal from people hurting me so deeply? Like I give everything and then they do this. And it's like, and so I think that, you go down to the quantum feeling model. I think we've got that on there. Yeah. The quantum feeling model. Replace entitlement with thankfulness, replace self-righteousness with humility, and replace victimhood with ownership. And so what I did is I discovered a natural law. So we all want fragrant roses. We just do. That's entitlement. I'm entitled to this feeling. And if somebody doesn't give me this feeling, then I'm going to be mad or angry with them. I'm entitled. And it's like an addiction. It really is. I mean, you can see it. Like we have 7 kids. Trust me. It's like the more you give your children, the more they expect. The more we give society, the more we give people, the more they expect. And all of a sudden they're entitled. You don't have to work for it. You don't have to sacrifice. You don't have to take any risk. All you have to do is just go ahead and come together with a whole bunch of other people who are victims. And we all come together and then we just demand that people give us stuff. And it's like, I wonder if that's why we have the mental health issues that we do. And so what I discovered is when I get horse manure, like it smells, it stinks. What people do to me, it stinks. What's been done to me just stinks. It just does. Like people, people who have been hurt by religious people, specifically Christians. And they tell me stories of how they've been hurt by Christians. And my heart is broken for them. And then I share my story. And I share, yeah, this is what happened to me and my wife and my kids. And they're like, holy cow. And you still go to church? Uh-huh. And it doesn't seem like you're bitter, Mark. No, no. I feel bad for those who have done it. I just do. So what I've learned to do is when people give me horse manure, I just plant it. I just like all things work together for good. It's like I just plant. I just like, okay, there's a purpose, there's a reason, there's something on why this horse manure is what it is. I'm going to take this, I'm going to plant it. Yeah, it stinks, it's terrible, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be that way. It's my choice. So one of the podcasts, I don't know when, as we kind of peel back, when we peel back the onion, there are going to be things that you're just going to be like, holy cow. For not having a degree in therapy and psychology, this guy's got some interesting perspective. My challenge would be is if there's like Jim Bontrager, my good friend, he said, God offends the mind to reveal the heart. God offends the mind to reveal the heart. I wish I'd have known that years ago because I'm much more of a blessing than I thought I was. like, And so if you learn to take the trauma, the abuse, the whatever, and you learn to take that and look at that like an out of body experience, and you say, hey, I'm going to take that, I'm going to plan it, I'm going to turn that into something phenomenal. So for those that are listening to the live, love to have interruptions. You're always free to, you're always free to interrupt, and you're always free to not disagree. Don't disagree with anybody. That's just kind of stupid. We'll explain that in another, but you can say I have a different perspective. So your perspective is your perspective. My perspective is my perspective. I have my life experiences and I know what I've gone through. You have your life experiences you've gone through. And so how do we heal from that? How do we, like a broken bone, help it to set it properly? And then how do we go ahead and use that strength? Like, how does the bone become stronger? Emotionally, I believe the same thing can happen. I believe that anything that have hurt us at the deepest level, I believe that that can be healed. And I have had a philosophy for years. If I'm going to laugh about something in 10 years, why waste 10 years, right? Like, why waste 10 years? Why don't we laugh now? If I'm going to heal in 20 years, why waste 20 years? Why don't I heal faster? And there's a way to do that. There's a way to do that. So hopefully this has been beneficial to you. If you have any questions, for sure, join the group and you'll be assigned the Life GPS mobile app, web mobile app. Join that group. You'll be assigned an art mentor. And so they'll help you help you through it. And then at some point you'll get 2 art buddies, the atomic ripple reaction tree. How do we go ahead and bringing peace to the Middle East and serenity to self? Being able to go through that. So if you have any questions, connect with them or the person who invited you to participate in today's session, or you can call toll free 888-230-2300, outside the US 630-393-9909. And always remember, we can accomplish so much more together than we ever could on our own. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.